Hey guys, today I'm here with Chelsea Perry, clinical hypnotherapist and regression specialist and Reiki master, who is also one of my really good friends how long have we known each other? Since it was high
School?
school,
Yeah, at least high school. So that's been '09 was like graduation time frame. So a long time,
a long
20
time.
to 15, 20 years.
Something like you're probably one of my longest standing friends who have actually stuck around with my crazy because we're both the same type of crazy.
I
And I
was gonna
think
say we both have our own dose of crazy.
which I really appreciate because it's hard to have our dose of crazy in the area that we live in. So you've definitely been a
Yes.
saving grace for me.
The South is definitely a has its own culture, and being what we are, our very quirky, unique personalities and jobs, it definitely it's different being here than I think the rest of the world. We're a little bit behind on open-mindedness per
Yeah,
se.
I've mentioned a couple of times on episodes that I've struggled heavily in this area and I've been to therapy and everybody's always like, Savannah, you're fine if we dropped you in Colorado or somewhere else. I'm like,
California, New York.
yeah, well,
Hmm.
great. That's wonderful, but I'm here. So here we are, the two of us, and not
I
many.
mean, it's
Yeah.
like that. You can't find people that. Well, I mean, look at my job for an example. I get calls from people who are over an hour away all the time where they're like, there's no one who does this, so I guess you're who I'm calling. Like, are there any local people who do hypnotherapy? And I'm like, unfortunately, no. There's really not.
No,
So
which brings us into what we decided on our topic is for today, because we could talk about a whole host of things between your hypnotherapy and Reiki understanding of energy, which of course is my favorite topic to talk about. You also have started your own homestead and are living life exactly how I want everybody to try their best to live life. So maybe we can do more episodes in the future.
that
But
would be a lot of fun because I could talk about all of those things for hours, which, even energy, I can talk about that in hypnosis too, because it's a thing, it filters over into what I do as well. So it's not just it's hard to stay on topic, but I'll try.
I mean, it melts over into every area, like the gardening, even the homestead stuff, like the copper coals and that we stick in the garden to make things grow better. That's energy work, just like the rest
Electroculture.
of it.
Yes, all the things. And, I talk to my plants. Like people are like, oh, she's a crazy person, but like I touch the plants as I walk by them and I speak to them and I speak life over the things that I grow because it feeds me. I mean, that they say, and this may sound and be a gross way to open up the conversation, but they say if you spit on your seeds, they are then bioavailable to your genetic makeup. I mean, how simple and yet fascinating. And people have been doing it for generations, and yet all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, that's disgusting. Like, who does that? Everybody, everybody who generationally have gardened knows to do that. And yet everyone's like, oh, that's gross. And it does nothing. Oh, yeah, it absolutely does.
That's cool. I've never heard of that before. And it's funny to me that people think it's gross because I mean, like you're sticking it in dirt afterwards. Explain to what does it matter? It feels like a deeply personal thing. Like you're
It
connecting it to
is.
you from the
It
get-go.
is. You're wanting it to nourish your body. It then has a different genetic makeup. I mean, there's been studies done on all kinds of things like this. You can find it if you look, but you don't need a scientific study. All you have to do is do it yourself, see how it makes you feel. I mean, talk to people who have been doing this stuff for generations. This is coming from people who have never put their hands in the dirt. So, who are you going to listen to? The people who have generationally been connected to the earth, who have tried and true methods of making things nourish their body, or people who want to sit behind a desk and type away to study it. It's
And
all
see,
about what you believe.
and I tell people all the time, we don't need that. I tell people all the time to be delusional if it makes you happy. It doesn't matter. And I say that and people take it 100 different ways. And the what I mean is like the science is great if you need the science to help you believe in the magic that's around you, but also you can just choose to believe in the magic around you. And oftentimes whatever you choose to believe is a self tends to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you want to believe that spitting on your seeds does nothing, then have fun in your dull mundane existence. But if you want to believe that it does do something and it makes them grow bigger and be genetically modified specifically to your DNA to help you with the nutrients that your body's lacking that it picked up, like you can create whatever story you like and it makes it
I
more fun.
It's funny because I've been teaching Oliver, my son, this stuff. Just all of the magic in life that's around you. And he saw me having a conversation with him. When the lights flashed, I said, "See, confirmation right there. You know." And he's like, "Wait a minute. Did you just talk to the lights?" And I was like, "Why wouldn't I? They just confirmed it. Like, why would I not? That's a sign." And he was like, "Wait." He was so confused. And he was like, "Wait a minute. So that's that's like a confirmation, like, but how do you know it's real?" And I said, "How do you not know it's real? Can you prove me wrong?" And he's like, "But why? Why would you?" I'm like, "Because it's magic. That's the magic of life. Why would I not? That's fun. Why make it so serious? I have fun with everything that I do. So if I want to listen to the lights flashing in my house instead of looking at it as a bad thing, guess what? My lights have done that now for 5 years, and nothing has ever gone wrong electronically. They can't find anything wrong because my husband, it drove him crazy. Why are the lights flashing all of a sudden? We need to call out the electricians. They did. Nothing was wrong. They can't find a single thing wrong. But my lights still flash, always when I need them to. That's the magic of life. And so I teach my kids the same thing. And, that's just part of the fun. You get to have fun with life.
I agree. I do the same thing with mine. And we have more science stuff that's coming out and everything, and the more we're learning is all that we know is that we know nothing. So make it up as you go. It's totally fine.
Mhm.
So our topic that we decided on today was how past life regression helps you in wait, tell me again what it was.
How it affects, or how it basically filters into the life we're living today, like how it affects you and what that looks like. And it's such an interesting topic because this is the life that I live. I do regression therapy, past life regression, life between lives, higher self communication through those sessions. I find it fascinating because when I do a session, and I have clients who are repeat clients and people who come once, when someone goes under, the session that they have that day would not be the same session they have the next day. And people were like, "But why? That doesn't make sense." Well, because your life that day is wholly different than the next day. And so the information that is filtered through for you in that moment, what you see, is solely pertaining to your lessons at that moment. And so what comes through, what you see and experience, is constantly individual to the moment. And so, a lot of people don't even know whether they believe in reincarnation. But I think as things are changing and people are reconnecting with who they are, reconnecting with the land, reconnecting with their own higher selves and their soul and their own inner light, they're starting to see that there's more to life than the things that you can see, which is where past life comes in because sometimes it explains things that are the unexplainable.
Hmm.
Why is someone sick and can't heal it? I know I have personally experienced that. And if it was not for me experiencing it because I'm a healthy skeptic, I wouldn't have necessarily had the belief system in place to do what I do today. But because I've seen it so many times now, it's fascinating where, an illness can be explained by something that didn't happen in the here and now,
Hmm.
but it's still part of your spirit and your soul memory that exists follows you everywhere. I mean, every aspect of every life is a part of you in every moment. So why wouldn't it affect you if there's a lesson in it that your soul's wanting you to understand? it's part of the bigger picture of why you're here. And so opening up that door to a life that may be going on, we call it a past life. We know time doesn't really exist, so it's all happening in the here and now. But tapping into that and getting a snapshot of your life beyond your life, of another aspect of your personality, is such a fun way to discover more about what exists beyond our realm and our day-to-day earth life.
Yeah, I tell people that again with the skepticism and all that, because I also am a healthy skepticist, and I have to like that's why I like the science so much, so that I can like bridge the gap between the understanding and the, is it a little too out there for me, or okay, I could probably get on board with that. Sure, why not is mostly how I approach things. But with hypnotherapy, it doesn't really matter if you believe in past lives or reincarnation. I do, but it doesn't really matter if you do, because it is an introspective tool. It's something, you have an issue, you have a problem that you're looking, seeking, you've been to doctors and they can't really help you figure anything out. You've tried this herb or that herb, it's not working. You've tried all of the lifestyle changes and you're still, and this is another tool to help explore your subconscious, because again, how many ancient texts tell us that we have all of the answers within us already? We
Mm-hmm.
don't need anything outside of ourselves. And then energy work in and of itself teaches you that you can self heal. You can heal your own anything. You just kind of need a little direction and belief in yourself and your own abilities to do so. So hypnotherapy, yeah, it's always you've done this to me very many times, and it
Yes.
and it always,
Experience.
yeah, I've actually mentioned you, probably never by name, but I've probably mentioned you in the podcast at least a handful to two handfuls of times, just because, uh, I'm always talking about these subjects, and when hypnotherapy comes up, I'm like, yes, I have done that. My friend. But
The
it
mysterious friend.
the mysterious friend, the mask has been unveiled. Here she is. Uh, it's always brought me, because I go into this like emotional turmoil just like anybody else does, and I'll have
Mhm.
a reoccurring issue that I can't seem to pinpoint or find the problem to, and then you put me under hypnosis, and within an hour we have pretty much exact. It's validation, it's understanding, it's further direction. Um, I Not a personal experience, but I read a book. I have an 800-page chakra book that is actually quite entertaining to read. It's written in uh layman's terms and story form, so it's not just purely textbook.
Mhm.
And she talks in there about how she had clients who would have these reoccurring issues that they couldn't come up with, and they traced it back to issues that they had, that their parents had or their grandparents had at that exact moment in time in space. And I
Mhm.
translated, like, it correlated to my own life, because when I've always been on the sickly side of things, from, well, my whole life. We could go back
Mhm.
even further, but
I know. Which is so unusual, right? Because then you don't search if you don't have these issues.
that's true.
So why open the door if you don't?
Well, we in my 20s, my mid 20s, things got really bad. Like 24 to 27 or 28 probably. Things got really, really bad. And which is about the time that I picked up this book and started reading it, right? And then I started correlating it with things in my own life, and I realized that my both my mother and my grandmother in their mid 20s, when their children were about the age that my children were at the time, were so sickly with different things that they couldn't take care of their children properly. So I was falling into that same mental pattern of
Mhm.
being like ridiculously sick, uncontrollably sick, to where it was debilitating and I couldn't care for my kids properly.
I
And
remember.
then you remember
That's
that? And
feels
then
like it's been a lifetime ago.
it has, hasn't it? It's been like 3 lifetimes at least. But as soon as I made that correlation, everything cleared up
Mhm.
instantaneously. I decided that, and all it took was being like, oh, that was my mom's pattern and my grandmother's pattern, but that doesn't have to be my pattern. And it's like this tension within me released all of a
Mhm.
sudden. And I relaxed and was like, I am fine. It's
It's a
fine.
generational thing that it's like it's almost like a contract, and you're just agreeing that somebody's going to break the cycle, right? Like someone's just going to acknowledge this comes from somewhere, doesn't belong to me, and I'm letting it go. That's all it is. It will, and a lot of times it's so funny because when I'm dealing with sessions, I have learned so much about why acupuncture is so effective because you're working on the energy body, and you've got your physical body and you've got your energy body. And once you learn to read what the energy body is doing while understanding why the physical body is reacting, so many times it's a generational thing
Hmm.
that's just waiting to be acknowledged and released. And you can feel it within the energy body because it's connected to your soul, which is all connected to your ancestry. And it's just like a little bell going, hey, we're ringing the dinner bell. Can somebody please take care of this? Like, and then the bell will quit ringing. But no one ever does it because you don't acknowledge that part of yourself that's picking up on things that are not just of the physical body. It's learning to read the energetics, your chakras, your field outside of your body. What is it doing? What does it look like? What's going on with it? And acknowledging that there's so many patterns and there's so many preconceived things that have been put into place that you agreed to. I mean, you just don't remember all of the agreements. I can't tell you how many times people have come in with contracts they didn't even know about. I'm one of them. I've had to deal with that too. And, I wouldn't believe if I hadn't experienced it myself because I hear about it in sessions, but I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. But like, is there some validity to this? And so I've had to learn the hard way over the years. The same thing. You get really sick, you can't figure out why, nothing's fixing it. And then you have to go these really unusual, odd routes where you're like, all right, I'm giving this up to the universe. What do I need to do? Something's got to give. Like, you got to help me somewhere. And then it takes you on this rabbit hole of spirituality and odd practitioners where you're like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to try and see if it works. But you begin to explore things you wouldn't normally when you realize that we all agreed. And this seems to be the consensus with even sessions. So many people at this time agreed to come in because we've already developed technologically, but we haven't mastered spirituality within that technological advancement. So you basically have humans who are built on your left side but not on your right side, and you've got to have an even build in every aspect of life. Your yin and yang, you've got your masculine and feminine. You All aspects need to be built on both sides. This is the generation of spirituality. So we're having to learn to tap into who we really are, to drop the things that aren't important, the facade of things and, all of the material things in life. We're building on the spiritual side now. And so this is why so many people are coming in with things that don't have easy answers because it's not supposed to be. You're supposed to look into places you wouldn't normally, and that turns you to a place that you normally wouldn't experience, which is going deep within the self and really digging for answers that you just expected someone to be able to fix easily, and then they can't. So this is where we're at as a society, as a people, is learning to delve deep within the self and find the mastery in that control. Anxieties that can't be fixed easily anymore. People are seeing medications aren't working like they used to. They're not fixing the problems, no matter what we do, because we have to find it another way.
Yeah, and we've been taught not to listen to our inner knowings and whatnot, and We've really gotten away from. Have you read the Celestine Prophecy?
I have
You
a long
have?
time ago. I did, yes.
Yeah. Oh man, it's one of my favorite series. 'Cause I'm still reading like the other ones as well. The 10th Insight and the 12th Insight, and then there's the something of Shambhala. But anyway, um the second insight in that book talks about history and how we got away from spirituality because the world used to be purely spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Everything happened because the gods willed it so. It rained or didn't because the gods were happy or sad or angry or whatever, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just kind of how everything was understood. And then not bashing religion or anything, but that it took over. And then we started seeing the discrepancies between what the clergy said and then what they did, which was, you know, not the same and not aligned with
Mm-hmm.
all of that. So we started to lose our trust in religion. And that's when
Mm-hmm.
we just cut off spirituality completely and turned straight towards science. And then we became very, very strict right angle science humans who
Mm-hmm. If there's
thought
not
all.
a science behind it, it's not real.
Right, right. So we just cut everything else off. And
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of us don't realize that spirituality can exist outside of religion. I know I didn't until I was in my early 20s because I grew up in church, but I never felt connected to it. And I had all these questions that nobody can answer. And I was just, I saw the discrepancies myself, between what the preacher said and then what they turned around and they were talking bad about people who missed church that day or whatever, whatever. And I was just like, this is so yucky. So
Mm-hmm.
I never felt connected to it. But I went because I had to. And then, but I didn't know that there was any other options.
Well, you're not taught that because that would be giving you your own free will, and that doesn't work when you're supposed to fit into a box. You need to follow and fit in the box. And it's the same way. I went to church and, I didn't have a choice for some of it, and I did have a choice for the rest of it. But, I went because
Welcome
that
to the
was the
South.
norm and that's what everybody did. And I asked so many questions and they hated it. They hated that I could not just be okay not knowing the answers to things. And I'm
Yeah.
like, but why? Why can't you tell me? Like, why does God have to be this mysterious thing? Why can't I talk to him? If he can talk to you, why are you so special? Like, we're all supposed to be equal. And man, it drove them crazy.
Mhm.
And so, eventually I just got told I was going to hell so many times. I just said, all right, I'm just going to go on my own path then, because if I'm going that way, then, I might as well have fun doing it. So I didn't ever misbehave. I just asked questions. I kept
Yeah.
asking questions. And it led me to what I do today, which is I found a way to get answers to things that have caused me so much mental strain because it has forced me outside of the box with things that are so hard to comprehend sometimes. And yet it's so free. It's so freeing to hear all of the things that we could know. And so much of it stems from the spirituality we used to have.
Mhm.
The plants talk, the trees talk. Yes, there's tree huggers for a reason because there's an electromagnetic current that comes from the ground. I've actually done a session not too long ago, and it was fascinating because she was a tree. She just went to a life as a tree, and I'm like, this is, it's one of those, is this real? Like, I've done this for 8 years, going on my ninth year, and I'm sitting here going,
You're a tree.
I don't know what to do with this. Like, I really don't even know what questions to ask. What do you ask a tree? But it was amazing because it opened up a world of something I had never truly comprehended. And the trees were talking. They had communication networks underground. And when one was lacking something, the rest of them filled in the gap. And when something was in danger, they literally allowed their branches to curl and protect and hide something. And that's why it's like little things get lost in the forest. No, they don't. The trees were protecting it, so they formed a barrier so that the physical eye could not see. And energetically, they were covered and protected the animals. And so, and when they died, the trees, if an animal died, the trees, embraced it and felt sorrow with it. And when they had an arrow, at the time go through their bark, they felt it and it was painful. And that signal got sent out to the other trees because there was danger, there was a risk. And the people going through it, they knew what the people's intentions were. They could feel it, what they were doing and what was going on. And during the session, I got a full understanding of the type of people they were experiencing at the time. And I knew at the time it was Native Americans and the white man is what they called them, because they looked so different than the dark ones that they had experienced for so long. And so, seeing this from a tree's perspective makes you see reality so different. That it's and they had feelings, and there was some things they were, they said, we don't have a reference for that. We don't understand that question, because they couldn't answer something they didn't have a human body to experience, but they had their own set of understandings and feelings. And when they got chopped down, at the end of the life of the tree, they said, we're still alive. You can't kill us unless you kill the roots of the tree, because we are a connected network. So I'm still fed and alive through our network of community. And that person cried when they had to leave, because they had never felt such a connectedness. They did not want to leave. I could hardly pull them away from the tree life to go on to the next place, because they didn't want to leave the love that they had experienced there, that they had never experienced as a human.
Love and connection. What a
It's
concept.
community.
Mm-hmm.
Community, because they all talked, they all shared. It was a give and take of nature. They knew when there was a certain bird. They didn't like certain bugs. They knew what bugs were on them, and they complained about certain things being on them, and then they sent out signals to get them to get off, just like humans do.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we just think of them as nothing. And they said, we feel the wind, we can experience it, we know what the wind is saying. And we could just as easily know the humans that came to talk and communicate. They knew what to tell them. So that is true that people used to listen and hear, like Pocahontas, right? Like, it seems so silly, but it's real. And that's the thing, is so many movies are so real right in your face, and you have no idea, truly no idea, how real that actually is. People use the wind to listen. It did talk. So do the trees, so do the plants. They could tell you when something's wrong, when something's coming. They were better at understanding the weather than we ever were, because they listened and they connected in with the earth, who communicates with you at all times. But we lost that too when we stopped walking barefoot upon the earth and connecting and touching the trees.
You picked that right out of my head, because I was sitting here the whole time. As soon as you were talking about the going to the past life with the tree and how it was alive, in my head I started singing like every rockin' tree and creature.
Yes, that's
With
so
Pocahontas.
real.
It
Yes,
is.
it is. And it's crazy that we just, we watch these movies and we think, oh, wow, what a concept.
And it never
But
goes deeper. We
it
like
comes
there
from reality.
all of the information is around us all the time, like not only in the form of books and ancient texts, which is where I talk about most of the time, but yeah, Pocahontas, Avatar, uh,
Avatar is very real. I have
yeah,
that come up too.
yeah,
That's a real thing. And that concept didn't just come out of thin air.
no,
It's funny because I have clients who, and I know this is probably getting into a little bit of the woo-woo, the way beyond what most people are used to hearing or dealing with. I have people who come to me for UFO abductions, and it's not uncommon, believe it or not, that I actually have a lot of people who run into this who didn't even know that this was part they had never even realized they were experiencing it until it gets brought up in their session. They're the ones seeing it. And then they're so confused because they're like, I don't understand where I am or what I'm doing. And, I've had a lot of people validate that they are, it's like an avatar. They choose to come to human life, to here, to earth, to experience things here, to assist at this time when we need it most. And yet they have an existing body on another planet as another species that are in like that cryo state within I've had some that are kind of in a stasis in water. I've seen some that are in a stasis that don't have water. And this is coming from people who didn't even believe in this stuff.
mm,
And so many times it gets validated with other people who go under and say the same things in the same scenarios. They explain planets the same. I've had people go to all obsidian planets who have these really unusual bird-like bodies, but still have a thinking mind just like we do, and have civilizations. And you've got planets of water and planets of jungles and all these things. we get those from somewhere. These animals that are in movies that you've never seen before sound just like ones that are on other planets. And all of the time, it's like, how do they wake up and they're like, I had no idea. Like they think they're making it up almost, but it's not. And then the more they explore and the more they do it and go under, the more they see, oh, wow, it's actually real. Like it is a real thing.
Oh, we have like Egyptian hieroglyphs and stuff with these like hybrid human people, bird
Hmm.
things.
There
Oh.
are hybrid humans. I'm writing a book right now with sessions transcripts. And that's actually one of the ones I just finished that I had done a couple of years ago. And a guy went under. And, he knows that he had had a lot of run-ins with UFOs and creatures that he had never seen before, but scared him half to death. He had extreme PTSD, trauma, just terrified of a lot of things because of it. Because how do you explain that when there's no one, you go to doctors and therapists and they tell you, well, you might be crazy
Yeah, you're
because it's
schizophrenic.
not
Sorry.
real. And they know it's real. They know they saw something. How do you explain that? And when we got to the higher self, what they told him was he's a hybrid human. And, he had tried to go into the military and they looked at his medical and they said, no, you cannot join the military. And they never told him why. And higher self told him, well, because you're hybrid and they know what you are. So they weren't going to let you in because it wasn't of their benefit and they know what you're capable of and what you can do. And so it wasn't in their best interest to have him there. And again, he had had these unusual experiences in life where people had, tried to tell his mom, hey, there's something different about your son. There's something special, but very different. People who were seers at the time that he had run into. And, how do you explain that? He had had so many unusual experiences, and the higher self told him so many things. You're a hybrid. You're a mix of different species. And that's why you get taken all the time because we have to constantly monitor because you are different. You are not your typical human. And yet you look just the same. And when he went back into his past lives, he was all caveman lives that came up. So it's like you never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to experience because there's so much color to each soul,
Hmm.
so many different variables. Each person's so different and where they come from and what they experience and the places they've been as a soul. They're so unique.
We
And
couldn't
so
begin to fathom.
it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And I didn't even know what a hybrid was. I was like, surely that can't be real. The skeptic in me is going, wow, surely surely the government would know if we had hybrids. Like, why has no one talked about this? Why has no one said anything about this?
Oh, we could open that can of worms, but
Exactly. I opened that can of worms after a time because it started coming up. And I was like, how do these people not know they're different? Like, what do you mean they're hybrids? Wouldn't we know? You would see it, but you don't. It's in their DNA, it's in their genetic makeup, and it's why their body reacts so strongly to certain things and why others don't. And, I've had clients who were told they were never allowed to go to a doctor. They always knew not to go to doctors. They had never been tested. Their blood had never been taken because they're different genetically, their makeup, and they would know right away something's not right with this person and they don't want to risk. So the higher self made sure that they stayed healthy, made sure they never needed a doctor. If something came up, it all of a sudden miraculously got better. Why? Because there are people that walk among us that are not the same. I mean, we're all different, right? But there are truly people who walk among us who are not your everyday person and they have no idea. Half the time they have no idea, but they discover it once they start opening the door. And that's where we're at right now is really learning about who we are and where we come from, what that looks like, what our soul journey looks like, and why we're affected in these lives so strongly by certain things.
so what would you say a hybrid would be capable of?
They have abilities that no people aren't supposed to have. You've got people who can levitate, people who can, I mean, I've seen it myself now that I've learned to experience it and I've come across it so often. People who can just, you look 1 second and they're in one spot and then the next minute they're in another room. And you're like, wait a minute, there's no way somebody walked or ran that fast. And they don't even realize they're doing it because it's so natural to them. And yet these abilities have been around on the planet for so long, but we lost touch with them. People who have inner sight, people who are psychic and don't realize it because they've lived a certain way their whole life and didn't know other people couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know people who can tell when someone's lying to them immediately. They just know because they're reading the energetic frequency of what's coming out, and they didn't realize that's what they were doing. They just thought everyone could do it.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd always get frustrated with people because they knew when someone was lying to them.
Mm-hmm.
But that should be what everyone can do, right? Well, it is technically something people should be able to do, but people have lost that connection with their spirit, with their soul in a way that has been there before. And that's why they're trying to bring it back again, because our guides, our spirit, our, deep inner core connection, the human's capable of so many things, of healing themselves, of reading their own energy. I've learned to do this over time as I've, kind of had to experience it myself. And I've realized how disconnected we truly are from our own abilities, our own powers as humans.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really all about discovering and just opening the door. Like, what's really there? What are we really capable of? Because you'd be surprised how much I've seen some amazing things where it's like people shouldn't be capable of levitating. And, it's like a glitch in the matrix. They just disappear and pop up somewhere else. But it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely real. And people are capable of so many more things with their own intuitive abilities, their own psychic powers. We call it that, right? And that's a big woo woo. But that's making it strange is what has caused the disconnect, because then I don't want to be the weird one, right? No
Mm-hmm.
one wants to be the weird one because you can't take it back once you open that door, because your soul's going, finally, finally, they figured it out. Finally, they're asking questions. Now we can help, because it's a free will planet and they can't interfere if you don't ask.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just waiting on us to ask. Just ask, just open the door. And I'm telling you, the floodgates, it's like your life changes from there on out.
I agree. Yeah, my kids, our kids are the same age, so I'm sure
Mhm.
yours also are into like the superhero powers and stuff, and my kids will be talking about, if you could have any superpower, what would you pick? And they're discussing it, and then they'll ask me, and I'm like, there's no scientific reason that we can't teleport or fly. There's literally not. We can't, there's no reason that we can't travel through time or like all of these things that we have
Mhm.
accounts in ancient texts. I mean, the Bible itself. It drives me crazy how people who worship the Bible will do so with all of its grand uh suggestions of things that people are capable of, and then turn around and be like, that's not real, that's not science, that's like the
Uh-huh.
discrepancies between that.
Cherry
But
picking.
yes, but we have tons of ancient accounts, not only in the Bible, but various thousands of year old texts that say that we are capable of these types of things. um the bee, you know the bee should not be able to fly. Its body's too heavy for its wings, yada yada. And the best that we can come up with is that the only reason a bee can fly is because it believes it can. And then we have also very many accounts of children who can float, levitate, do all sorts of things
Mhm.
because they have not yet been told by the world that they cannot. So they just can. And you have
Mhm.
oh man, TikTok. You can really find these things on TikTok, connecting people, and there's all sorts of people on there that's like, I remember specifically being able to levitate when I was a kid. I
Mhm.
have not been able to figure out how to do it again.
Yeah,
But
because you think about it, because you're trying to recreate something that you didn't have. It's an innate ability.
yeah.
Your, what the way they've explained it is, your body, your physical body is made up of, it has quartz crystalline structures within the cells of your DNA. And those cells have memory that's attached to your higher self, which is the bigger part of our soul that we are always in communication with. Now, a lot of people have cut themselves off in some form or fashion, which is why your abilities are not there,
Hmm.
because you're told it's not possible. And then that kind of shuts down those energy centers and that aspect of the self that you have access to. And you've got that crystalline structure, and the sun, what they say is it brings through light codes as it shines upon the earth, depending on the time and frame we're in. That's why astrology is so powerful, because it connects to different aspects that are being illuminated at the time. And humans are so intricately connected to the earth and to the sun and to the sky because it's a part of our DNA, because it's all part of, this big energetic thing that exists together symbiotically. Your cells are in communication with the earth and with the sun and with the sky. And the light codes that come through at the time will activate and work on different things. And they say now that we are in a time of gaining spirituality, that the cells of our DNA and that crystalline structure are being upgraded in a way that allow us easier access to things we wouldn't normally have access to because we're such a dense 3D world that we live in. So it's very hard for that to filter through on a 3D level where we exist as humans. So now that we're starting to rise in consciousness again, we're getting more access to these things where we're learning more things we're capable of. Um, I've been told that there are, I want to say four, it might have been five, true avatars on the planet that are not within access of people because, they would be hunted and killed, right? Because it's an anomaly, but who are capable of all the things a human should be capable of that exist here on the planet. And their energy existence here alone allows part of that to rise. They're helping in the rise of that consciousness because they've mastered all of the things a human is capable of, all of the things we are and have access to. And you see people who are masters of chi, who are starting fires with their hands, who are healing people with electromagnetic current shocks through the body because they have tapped into that part of the soul that you have access to. And it's the same people are learning in sessions what they're capable of, where their abilities come from. Um, I had one person go under and they learned that they were a healer, but we hear that a lot, right?
Mhm.
But they explained it as a DNA healer. So they explained it as someone who makes these quantum jumps into a place where life is in the in between. And they shuffle through all aspects of your soul and your human where that issue doesn't exist. And then they pull it back into the physical. So it's almost like bringing it to a higher dimension, a higher vibrational state, and then filtering that new unencumbered part back into the physical. And then it's just healed. And right, most healers don't know how to explain where it comes from or how they heal because how do you explain that or begin to make sense of that? But it's like a quantum jump, like an existence within a quantum field that you're moving to temporarily to bring back an existence of the part that is not broken or ill. And that's why healers are effective in some ways because they are they are existing in a place where the 3D is not bogged down and bringing that energy back through, filtering it into the human where it goes, oh, I have that memory. You have a blueprint of your body. Your body has a physical blueprint when it comes in. And those things don't, that illness that you have when you're 20, that illness that comes up when you're 30 or 40 or 50 didn't exist at one point.
Mm.
It's not in your blueprint until it is in your blueprint. So there's a way to go back and find where the cells naturally knew what to do or knew how to exist without that issue. And it can be adjusted. It can be recreated. Healers have figured that out without learning the ins and outs, right? The scientific,
Mhm.
because science doesn't know how to explain that. So getting a glimpse into what that healing looks like is fascinating because then it starts to make sense of some of the ways that healers exist and work with the energy field, and we didn't really understand how.
Mhm.
And I find that fascinating because it helps make sense of some of the things that we see and don't have explanations for. And it's another way to start to make sense on a 3D world. What's going on that we don't understand? Sorry. Allergies are so bad at this time of year, and we've been outside gardening
Mhm.
and in around the property. And sometimes it gets so bad where I'm like, oh, sometimes I love this part of the season, and then the physical body just does not always enjoy this part of the season.
Yeah. I
So
I was gonna ask if you knew, but I know you do know because upon looking up what his name was, I remembered that you're actually the one that told me that I should read his books. But Dr. Richard Bartlett, he
Matrix energetics.
yes,
Yes.
that's exactly what you're talking about. So if anybody wants to look more into the basically the energetic blueprint and shuffling through the realities to pull the one you want into the current 3D world, that's the books that you need to read for sure.
It's definitely been validated in sessions, and it's funny because these things were coming out in my sessions before I ever read his book. So when I read his book, it was like a light bulb went off because I was like, this makes so much sense. And he talks about these most crazy possibilities of a
Mm-hmm.
human. And he tells it through his experiences and his healings of other people. And, he talks about this field that's been created with how much healing he's done has created this space that you could tap into and do the same for yourself because it's a path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm. It is
And
just
it's the same
wow.
thing. Yeah. I mean, you've got people like Charlie Goldsmith that heal and don't know why or how. And all of a sudden, somebody is not walking, and then 2 seconds later, they're walking
Mm-hmm.
and they can't make sense of it. It's the same thing. It's exactly what that's explaining. And it may be explaining it on such a rudimentary, very basic level that it's hard to make sense of, but it's because you can't explain energy and its capabilities. Not truly. One day I think we'll understand on a much deeper level, but where we are now, it's like we're in elementary school on what we're capable of understanding until we start to acknowledge that these things exist and can be tapped into.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how we got from how our past lives help us in our current lives to this, but I love the turn it's taken.
I mean, it is all of those things and then some. So
Yeah,
if
it
you're
is.
looking at how it affects you now, I mean, that technically is, in a way, we're learning the same thing in this life that the past lives are trying to bring through. And so many times people will go under and they will see, a major turning event, right? Like they get married and then it's into an abusive relationship and then they kill themselves, right? So then they don't learn the lesson and the soul takes on a lot of damage. And then they come back and they experience these horrific things again and don't realize that the soul doesn't take on this damage in a way that the physical body does when we go through trauma because the soul exists beyond the body
Hmm.
and within a state where all of that doesn't harm us. So it looks like this grand, horrible thing, but we have to be able to look beyond that. And what did you learn from it? Like, truly, when you heal from it, when you move beyond, instead of living within the state that has caused extreme anxiety or stress or pain, mental anguish, because as a human, that's all we can see is the
Hmm.
experience. And then they say our soul, our timeline, you're looking at a timeline in front of you. And when a trauma happens on that timeline, part of you stops at that timeline and doesn't move forward.
Hmm.
And that's where doing a lot of inner child work, it may sound silly, but it's not because a part of your soul, the physical part of you, got stuck.
Hmm.
And that's why it's a perpetual trauma all the way down that line. You're stuck here and never fixed it, never healed it and addressed it and brought it forward with you. And so you're taking these different aspects of the soul. Shamans do soul retrieval. It's the same thing because you are going back to that aspect of yourself. You're healing it on some level and you're pulling that aspect of yourself back to the current time. And so then all parts of you in the moment are now working together instead of being stuck on pieces that you've left behind. And so it's the same thing. If past life does the same thing, sometimes we're going into this life, sometimes we're going into the in between, which is the soul realm, the Akashic records, and sometimes, a lot of times, we're going back to a past life where the trauma originated from that then you just didn't heal. Kind of off topic, and yet on the same topic. I had a client go under once, and she was married to this really bad person and she was murdered, right? Because they were doing revenge on this husband, and so she was a byproduct. She was killed very violently. And when she went to the in between where her soul was existing in the soul realm, she was being healed. And the guides and everyone who were with her healing her where her soul needed, you know, time to adjust. There's a lot of people who have either traumatic death, suicide, they go to a place of healing after before they continue on to the next thing. She was getting healed, and there was a spot on her shoulder that has always caused her problems in this life that they couldn't heal or they weren't able to fix completely. It showed up as a black spot, just a black spot within her energetic soul field. No big deal. And when she came into this life, she had pain in that shoulder and into her back that nothing fixed. She just thought it was forevermore a chronic thing that, oh, well, you got to deal with.
Hmm.
When she went under the second or third time, She went to that life. And then when we were exploring in between, I asked if that piece could be removed since it's there and you're getting healing. Can't they remove that? And they said, no, we can't remove it. And, curiosity, I was like, but why?
Mhm.
Why? If you can do anything in spirit, why can't you remove that? So we got to the higher self. And I started asking questions, why did you show her that life? What was that about? What about the part you couldn't heal in the spirit? What was that? And finally, we got to an answer that absolutely shocked me because I was not prepared for what they said. They said it was dark magic. Okay, what does that mean? Please inform me. Can you please tell her what do you mean by that? And they said that the family that she married into, the women in that line performed dark magic rituals. That's why they were in power. And because she married into it, they performed magic on her she was not aware of, which connected her to the demonic line entities that were attached to that family, that familial line. And so by default, she had an attachment that because she just because she married into, she gave approval for. She technically agreed without agreeing
Without
to be.
awareness.
And so it followed her into this life and caused her physical pain because it was within her energetic field. And we had done clearing work, she had done Reiki, all of these things, and it didn't fix it. Why? Because technically she gave permission. So without her permission, it could not be removed. So it showed up in this life as physical pain, but it went back to that life where that dark magic had been done, and even the higher self had a very hard time removing it because it had been there so long, because it had followed her through lives. And she had had that life, that pain in every life after that, and didn't know it, just thought it was a chronic thing. In
Mhm.
this life that she didn't know what to do with, they cleared it finally because at the higher self, she had been shown that, so she understood where it came from and she was ready to release it and remove it. And they said that that dark magic was very powerful. And, she had really taken damage on her soul level from that. That was a very soul defining life. And so she released it. And ever since then, the pain's been gone. It disappeared. Can you explain it away and say that that's real? Sure. Who knows if you want to believe in it? And there's a lot of people who are finally ready to believe in those things. And there are plenty who are not. Can I say it's real? I've experienced it personally. So I know it's real because I've had to go through it so that when other people come to me with this stuff, it's not crazy.
Mhm.
It's not impossible. It does happen. These things do exist. The light and dark, the duality we live in is very real. And so that's why I'm so adamant about anything that comes up, whether I've come across it, whether I believe in it, I have an open mind because they've hit me over the head so many times with experiences because I didn't believe that I'm kind of like, okay, I'm kind of ready to learn the nice way. Can you stop giving giving me the hard lessons? I'll believe what you send to me, even if it's only real for that person. They just need someone who believes it at that moment, who can help them so that they're not crazy because they're
Mhm.
really not. So many experiences I've seen, people think they're nuts,
Mhm.
but they're not. It's real for them at least, and so I hold space at least for that moment, whatever that needs to be, because the rest of the world doesn't hasn't caught up with those things yet.
Mhm.
So it's not crazy. It's just that no one else is ready for it yet.
Mhm.
And being on the leading edge of that is terrifying for a lot of people who are having these things come up that they don't know what to do with. There's got to be someone out there who can help, but who? Who do you go to? It's just really unusual things that people are experiencing now that they can't explain away anymore because it doesn't just go away. You can't just push it under a rug
Mhm.
because the soul needs to deal with things generationally, past lives that are ready to be shed so that the soul can ascend in a way that it's not been able to here on earth. But we're ready for it now.
Yeah, I agree. It, it is scary, and both for all involved, but only because we're not used to it, only because we're not accustomed to it. We've been told that everything like this is either devil stuff or crazy stuff. And nobody
Hmm.
wants to be associated with either of those things. But
Yeah,
oftentimes, it all it takes to fix things is a little bit of awareness and support, validation.
because there are people out there who are experiencing it. They're just not talking about it, maybe because they don't want
Yeah.
to be crazy. They're not talking about it because who would believe them? And there's not a lot of other people out there that are experiencing the same thing. But in reality, there are a lot of people going through the same things right now.
A lot.
And that's where finding community and people who do get it and are waking up to this stuff. There is, it's so silly to think we have a limit to the things we can experience as human and try to put it in a box.
Hmm.
Everybody's experience is different, and that's why they think it's crazy because no one else is saying anything, but it's because all of the unusual is happening right now. Things you can't explain away. And that's what makes it fun. If you can embrace it, the unusual aspects of your soul that no one's meant to be the same. Literally, if you embrace who you are truly, the odd and unusual, you'll realize how many people were waiting for you to be who you are so that they could find you.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of people needing that right now. And it's fun. It can be so much fun if you let it be. If you get beyond the fear aspect that holds people back, you'll realize how much fun this really is to just explore the world beyond our 3D existence.
Hmm.
There's so much out there, good and bad. And there are people who do mean harm, and there are people who are not doing things, in the best nature and manner.
Hmm.
Sure, you're going to run across people who are likely not doing things in the best, with best intentions, but you learn by experience.
Hmm.
You learn the bad so you can learn the good, and then you find your way.
Hmm.
And there are people who do mean well and people who do want to help and who are doing the work to help release these things and shed light on them. And so it is fun. It is the leading edge. It is part of the soul's growth and journey to experience life this way. So when you're fighting it, you get sick. When you fight who you really are, your body can't keep up because you're denying your soul, your
Hmm.
journey, your experiences. Look beyond the fear and just truly discover what can really be out there.
Hmm.
Life is meant to be fun. It doesn't have to be difficult. We just make it that way
Hmm.
time and time again. For what reason?
For
I mean,
what?
it's not needed, but you got to drop all of the things that belong to us that don't belong there
Hmm.
anymore.
Yeah. We did an episode, it was several months ago, something about the neurodivergent connection to shamanism. And
Mhm.
we touched on these subjects, and man, I walked away from that episode with a vulnerability hangover because I had shared things that I had never shared in such a public light before. And but the amount of people after that episode aired that came out and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you talked about this. I've always thought I was crazy. This is what I've been dealing with." It's unreal. I would venture even to say that I'm going to use the word most loosely. And when I say most, I'd say that would mean more than 50% of people are experiencing things like this. On that episode, we called them spiritual emergencies, which I liked. I thought that was pretty fitting.
It's like a medical emergency. I like that.
Yeah, spiritual
I
emergencies.
can tell.
Yes.
And that's really all of this to say. People who are drawn to certain places, certain things, certain experiences, it's for a reason. And it goes back beyond just this life. They say that, if you're drawn to a certain food or vegetable and you're just obsessed with it, it's because you lived somewhere where that was likely the most available food and you created a soul relationship with that connection that your body thrived on. And your soul remembered that. And then it feels that now. Like I'm obsessed with tomatoes. I could live off them 24. I mean, I pretty much do live off them. I grow them, I eat them. I live off every food I could put a tomato on or in or a sauce.
I'm like that with peanut butter and bananas.
Exactly. So you likely, had some connection to, a place where that was readily available, whether it be in a different form, because obviously they likely didn't just make peanut butter. It was probably just that food grown naturally or, bananas where they grew readily. And that was a huge staple in your diet. They say that's because your soul remembers that and it connects with that. Same thing with places. You feel pulled to a place, well, your soul remembers something about it. And when you go, you would be surprised how that memory connects when you put your feet on the ground and really connect with the area. You can
Mm-hmm.
feel it in your soul. We're at a time where we're feeling these things, where we're learning that there's more to us. And that's so much fun to discover.
Mm-hmm. It is. We could go on for ages, and you and I do go on for ages. You get us in person, and we this is what we do. We talk about stuff like this for like
Hmm.
4 to 6 hours at a time.
Yeah, we just go off on tangents. But it's because there's like, it's soul food. It's true soul food. Like you have people who just have, generic conversations. How was the weather? But
Yeah.
what about like how you feel when you go play with the plants in your yard? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what happened today? Like, what spiritually just changed for you that day?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what growth have you had? That's the fun stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
love those kind of conversations. Like, that's where soul food, it's literal and non-literal soul food.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the conversations that's connection.
Absolutely.
We all need that.
Yes. Yes, we do. So, you want to tell people how they can find you if they want to find you?
So they can find me. My business name is Integrative Hypnotherapy, LLC. You can find me. You can search it on Google. You'll see my business pop up. You'll see my website come up. It's i-hypnotherapy.com. And you can email me. My phone's listed on there. You can get a lot of information from the website that just explains a lot about what I do and what I deal with and work with. And being a hypnotherapist, I work with the normal everyday things that people come for, anxiety and phobias and sports performance and weight loss, things like that. But I mainly specialize in past life and working with the higher self, healings and deep stuff that way. So, there's a lot that I work with. And being a Reiki master, I do Reiki sessions and we teach. But you can find more information on the website and you can get my contact information there.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that those are readily available.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do several more episodes if you'd be up for it.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't stay on topic half the time today, so
I knew we weren't going to, and that's why you were like, how about this or how about that? And I was like, sure, whatever. And you're like, what about this subject? Sure, whatever. Because I knew. Like,
yeah, I
but
don't know why we can't stay on topic, but it's because all the things are fun. All the conversations are fun, and I could talk about any of it for hours.
yeah, and
People do that though.
we're starved for these types of conversations too, because
Mhm.
nobody wants to talk about them.
And the information is so validating. Just to sometimes hear it is healing in a way
Yeah.
because it's like, wow, I didn't know that. Like that clicks where nothing else has. Like you said, just having those deeper conversations or hearing someone talk about something is so validating and healing.
hmm It's
So,
powerful for
well, definitely.
anything that you're wanting to do. And that's why the podcast's overall theme is just healing in general.
Mhm.
And it encompasses everything. Like man, what we talk about, what we do, it literally encompasses everything. And that's why we go on so many tangents because it doesn't to somebody who's not familiar with how like energy work works and whatnot, it seems completely random. And now we're over here talking about UFO abductions, and now we're over here talking about other dimensions, and now we're over here talking about our shoulder pain. But it's all connected and it's all the same thing. And it's incredibly intricate and complex, but also at the same exact time, it's incredibly simple and universal across the board, no matter what
Mhm.
subject we're on.
There's a million and one topics, and it's whatever you're called to. That's your permission. Like whatever you're called to is the tool that your particular soul gravitates to. That's why there's so many options. There's so many things, and so there's always a little key piece of information in whatever topic that's going to call you. That's the direction you go. That's the one you follow because that's what's going to match the frequency that you need for healing
hmm
on whatever level.
Yeah, you just gotta find yours. You gotta find your
Mhm.
frequency to dial into. Well, there's like a quote or something that it's like the universe in a drop of water or something, or a drop of water in the universe. It's the same thing.
Mhm.
As above, so below. It's the more you understand all of it, the more it like that's why we got to keep making episodes. So because there's literally billions. of words to try to explain this very simple thing that requires just we just got to keep using different words until things start clicking, and then once they click, you're like, oh, it's so
Yeah.
simple.
We're just here to learn and explore. And once we realize that, it's not so stressful. Life isn't so serious, doesn't need to be. We never came here with that. We go back to the other side and we all laugh and celebrate and all the things because this was just a play that
Hmm.
we got to partake in and we knew what our roles were. And a lot of times we get lost, but we don't have to. And it's supposed to be fun. You're enjoying your part. Some people are happy to play the bad part. And, once people realize that, it makes life a lot easier.
Hmm. Well, I love talking to you. I guess we'll let them go now.
Yes, as always, again next time.